Jessica Carrier with the Joe Davis Conservation Foundation. Thanks again for joining us for another Facebook Live event. This morning we're going to start our session off with announcing the winner of last week's Facebook Live event. So, last week's Facebook Live event at Wapello was sponsored by Fritz Garden Center and Nursery in Stockton, Illinois. And so all you have to do to enter into one of these contests is comment or share. So we had quite a few people comment or share this video last week. So I will draw the name. Let's see. Okay. And last week's winner is Kay Kilgore. All right, Kay. So we will get a hold of you to let you know how to pick up your gift basket from Fritz Nursery in Stockton, Illinois. Thanks, Fritz, for donating that. Okay, so this week's Facebook Live event is sponsored by the Feathered Nest in Galena, Illinois. They have donated a glass bird ornament for this week's Facebook Live event. So thank you, the Feathered Nest, for donating this and sponsoring our event today. So all you have to do to get your name into that drawing is comment or share this Facebook Live video, and we'll do another drawing next week. So let's get into our frogs and toads. Today we're going to do a virtual frog walk with our executive director, Steve Barr. Tell us a little bit about where we are and what we're doing here.
All right, so happy Earth Week, everybody. We are along the Galena River Trail, just near our Buehler Nature Preserve. And this is where we do our annual Earth Day Frog Walk. Sorry you can't be with us here, but please feel free to come down anytime and visit this pond, and you can hear some of the frogs calling in the background. We're going to start by just showing you some frogs that you can find in our ponds and streams and wetlands this time of year. And I want to start off by thanking Izzy and Cody. Hold on. I want to start off by thanking Izzy and Cody Steffes. Ben Steffes is our site steward at our Valley of Eden Nature Preserve. And Ben took Izzy and Cody out yesterday to their favorite frog pond near their home, and they caught some of these frogs for us. So the first frog we're going and how they're different from us. So you can see they have eyes, big eyes, and they have eyelids that close from the bottom up. That's so when they go in the water, they can still see, but they have a clear eyelid that closes. They also have a nose where they can breathe and a mouth. And these, whoa, you can hear them. And these things here are their ears. They don't have any outer ear. They have an inner ear. But that's where their ears are, right behind their eyes. That's called the tympanum. You can see they have smaller front legs that aren't webbed, the toes aren't webbed, and very thin skin, sensitive skin. So their skin is very sensitive to pollutants and to toxins in the environment, and they can also breathe through their skin. So they breathe in two ways, which is different from us. We just breathe through our mouth into our lungs. They can do that. But they can also breathe through their skin, which they do when they're underwater for a long time, or when they're hibernating. They hibernate oftentimes underwater in the leaf litter. But if you look at their toes on their back feet, you can see that they're webbed, and that allows them to swim really efficiently, and they have really strong, powerful back legs. Pretty much all frogs have smaller front legs and strong back legs.
Maureen is asking, which frog is that?
This is the green frog. So it's very similar to the bullfrog, which you'll see in a minute. And it's one of two larger frogs that we have. Green frogs and bullfrogs are the two largest frogs we have in our area. All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Jess now. And Jess is going to come up a little closer, and she is going to show us a bullfrog and a leopard frog.
Okay. So these frogs here, these are, thank you to Tony Warwald at the Hartsville Nature Center in Jackson County, Iowa. He helped me catch these frogs yesterday. So let's see, let's get out our bullfrog first. Here's our bullfrog. Okay, and so here's a small bullfrog, and they're actually very similar to a green frog when they're young like this. Usually when bullfrogs are a little older, they are much larger than a green frog. So that's one of the ways you can tell them apart. And when they're small like this, it's a little bit more difficult to tell them apart. But so there's a little bullfrog. And we have a big leopard frog here. And so he kind of gets his name because of his spots. He's a leopard frog. And you can see the same tympanic membrane there right behind his eye, and the same short legs in the front and long legs with long webbed toes in the back. And this is actually a very large leopard frog. So these are just a few species found here in Joe Davis County, Illinois. And there's a lot of different species here. Let's see. I think we have a chorus frog too.
Oh, there it goes.
Oh, he jumped away. Oh, there he is.
So you can see how tiny this one is. This is a chorus frog, and this is a full adult. We don't have any young frogs this time of year. We have some first and second year frogs that are smaller than they can get, but this is a full-grown chorus frog, so you can see how tiny they are. And that's the frog that's making the call that you might be able to pick up. It kind of sounds like you're drawing your thumb across a comb. And so they're very loud. There's just a few singing now, but when there's a lot singing, you can hear them from maybe a half a mile away. They're so loud. The other frog that's really tiny like this, which we don't have, but we might be able to catch one, is a spring peeper. They also sing very loud and are very tiny. And these are the frogs that come out very early. So they've been out for over a month. They're the tiniest frogs we have in our area. They're the loudest singers, and they're the earliest risers. So they'll come out onto this pond and wetland when there's still ice on the pond and start their calls. And they're calling to attract each other so they can mate.
We have a question. Bonnie Lynn wants to know, how big do bullfrogs get?
Well, they can be like the size of our hand, or maybe even a little bit bigger. So they're our largest frog in our area. These are amongst our smallest. And I'm going to put that one back again. Thank you to Izzy and Cody for finding that small frog. And all of these animals that we collected, all these frogs and toads that are collected, this is very important. We're going to be returning them to their home pond. We're not going to be releasing them here to this pond. And the reason we're doing that is this pond might not have bullfrogs. And if we introduce a bullfrog, well, bullfrogs, guess what? They eat smaller frogs. So we might destroy the ecosystem here by introducing a new frog, and we might bring diseases that were from another part of the area that these frogs aren't immune to.
What about frogs you might find in a pet store? Are those native frogs, or are those?
No, almost always those are from another country, and those are brought over, part of it, trading. People are interested in having animals at home. If you do have an animal like that at home, a frog that you bought at a store, please do not introduce that outside ever. Don't take it outside, don't let it outside, don't put it in a pond, because we know from scientific research that those frogs and toads and salamanders that are from other countries are bringing diseases and wiping out entire populations of native frogs and toads and salamanders. So you have to be really careful. We're going to end here. with a toad. So these are also amphibians. And you can see different colors. They tend to be brown and they blend in really good with the soil and the earth. And they're just starting to come out. I found this one on my driveway last night. A really good time to look for toads and frogs is on warm, rainy nights, because that's when they get out and move around. They have to keep their skin moist. If their skin dries out, they can't breathe through their skin. So they tend to move around a lot on warm, rainy nights. You can see them on roads, on your driveway, hopping around in the grass. They also have webbed toes, but not as distinct as their cousins, the frogs. And this is the American toad. This is one of 2 toads we have in our area. So there's not as many different types of toads as there are different types of frogs. And these are generally terrestrial, so you'll find them in woods, in your garden, around your house, but you won't find them near ponds except in the spring when they're mating and laying their eggs. So amphibious means part of the life cycle of this animal is dependent on water. And so they come to ponds and streams and lakes, the edges, to mate, lay their eggs. Those eggs hatch into tadpoles. And the tadpoles swim around for a while, then they grow front legs, then they grow back legs, or back legs first, then front legs, and they lose their tail, then they hop out of the pond. And some of them spend most of the rest of their life on land, others stay around the ponds and wetlands. Frogs tend to be more around ponds and wetlands, except for our native tree frogs, which again just go to ponds to mate.
What about the old wives' tale that toads give you warts?
I don't know, do I have any warts? I don't think so. No, that's just an old wives' tale. Oh, one thing about toads before we get in, toads can emit a toxin that makes them taste really bad and is actually poisonous. Now, it's not poisonous to handle them, but it is probably not a good idea to eat toads. Some people eat frogs, frog legs. I've eaten frog legs, but you wouldn't want to eat toad legs because they actually have a toxin in them. So no licking or eating toads, frogs. Yes.
So
Question.
Kay is asking, are frogs dangerous to dogs?
Are frogs dangerous to dogs? No, but toads might be. So if your dog eats a toad, it might get sick. Probably wouldn't kill it, but it might get sick. Yep, good question. All right, we're gonna go into the pond here and walk around in the muck and see if we can find any toads or frogs or frog eggs or frog tadpoles.
You'll have to come back here because I'm losing my signal if I go out there.
Okay.
So just whatever you find, bring it on back.
All right, we'll do.
We do have one more question from Susan Barg, who wants to know, do frogs sleep?
No, they don't. At least scientists don't think they sleep. But they sleep in the winter. They hibernate all winter long. But they don't sleep at night. At least that's what scientists think at this point.
So a good way to catch the frogs is by scraping the bottom because they like to live underneath all that leaf litter.
What's the bottom feel like, Jess?
Very sticky.
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. How cold is the water?
Oh, it's chilly.
The water's chilly. Steve has on his tennis shoes. Okay, Jane Yoder is asking, will JDCF have their real frog walk this May? And Jane, I'll answer that. That was scheduled for tonight. So this is our virtual frog walk for 2020. Hopefully we'll be back in person next year. Okay, Maureen Bardosk wants to know what kind of nets that you have.
Well, these are just pond nets you can get online. So they have we can show, they kind of have a cloth outside, but underneath they have a fine mesh, and that allows the water to flow through. So I'm just gonna let Deb look inside there. No frogs, but I did find, see if I can find it again, a damselfly nymph and a snail.
River Tryphon Simon would like to know what time frogs wake up in the spring.
So it depends on the species, River. The tiniest frogs, the spring peepers and the chorus frogs, are out even when the ice is leaving the pond. So in early mid-March, you might hear on a warm day in early mid-March, the chorus frogs and the spring peepers singing. So they're out first and moving around. Then comes the rest of the frogs. So leopard frogs would be next in terms of singing, and toads, they're kind of at the same period of time. So they're starting to sing now and get down to the ponds. Leopard frogs sound like if you took a balloon, blew it up, and put your hand around it and kind of rubbed on the balloon, that sound that it makes, that's actually what leopard frogs sound like. Toads just have a loud sort of peeping sound. You'll hear them when they're calling. They're calling in mass. There's a lot of them. And then comes the green frogs, and they sound like a banjo string, a loose banjo string. Boom, boom. And then comes the bullfrogs. They kind of sound like a mooing frog. A mooing cow, rather, cow frog, and they are mating last. But you can see we caught all of these now. So what is it? Towards the end of April, they're all out. But in terms of when they're mating and most active, they kind of come from mid-March all the way through the end of April into May. And you'll hear, even though chorus frogs started singing in March, you'll hear them singing all the way through June and July sometimes. So.
Steve, what should you do if you catch a frog?
Oh, very good question. If you catch a frog, it's always good to take a look at it up close, kind of get to know it, look at its underside. One of the things, we'll show that again. So you can see how well camouflaged this green frog is. It would blend in the bottom of the pond, but underneath, look at how white it is, right? And kind of yellow under its throat, but white. So, you know, take a look at the frog. Look at it up close. You can see the little nostrils. Do you see it breathing? You can see the nostrils going open and closed. You can watch the eyelids blink. We'll wait for that. There, see its eyelids opening and closing. Whoop. So, and they're very slippery. So handle them gently. And then you can keep them overnight maybe, but always put them back in their home habitat. That's where all their food is. That's where their friends, their brothers and sisters, mother and father might be. That's the best place for them to be. Not inside in a bucket like this, but back in its home territory, its home pond. And that's where these guys are going within a couple of hours. They'll go back to their home pond and be very happy.
Now, how are you holding this frog?
So I'm just holding it from the back legs, and you can see it kind of stretches out. You can also hold them like this, but you can't see them as well. But they're very slippery.
Okay, River thought the cow frog was very funny. Lynn Werner would like to know, where do frogs and toads go during the winter?
Yeah, so toads will typically burrow down into the soil, maybe under a log or in an opening of a gopher hole or something. Frogs will go down into the leaf litter of the pond, which was that real squishy layer we were just walking on, and they'll burrow down into that leaf litter. Pond will freeze over on top of them, and they stay there all winter long, and when the pond thaws, the ice thaws, they'll start coming to the surface. Other frogs, tree frogs and such, will go sometimes in your garage. Sometimes they'll go under logs or under in bark. They're just trying to get away. And here's the cool thing about frogs: they can actually freeze. They have antifreeze in their blood, and so it doesn't break up their blood vessels, which normally when animals blood freezes, it just shatters and it kills them. Not frogs and toads. Wood frogs live all the way up into the Arctic, and they have a lot of antifreeze in their blood, and it allows them to overwinter even in the coldest climates. That's a really good question.
Elliot Mock would like to know if toads climb trees.
Well, sure. Well, tree frogs do for sure. Have I ever seen a toad on a tree? I don't think I've ever seen a toad on a tree, but I've definitely seen tree frogs. And we have two different kinds of tree frogs. We have the gray or Kopp's tree frog and the green tree frog. So there are two species of tree frogs in our area. You'll see them on trees, you'll see them on your screens, on your windows, on your siding of your house. They seem to like the exterior of human environments as well as trees.
Okay, Sue is asking, she's just found today's discussion. Will she be able to rewatch or rewind? The answer is yes. It'll be posted on our Facebook page as soon as it's done.
All right. Well, I think, Jess, did we miss anything?
I think that's it. If you guys have more questions, feel free to type them in the comments section. We can always answer them after the video's finished, too. So, thank you all for joining us today, and thank you to the Feathered Nest for sponsoring this week's Facebook Live event. You can tune in next week to hear about the wildflowers of Joe Davis County. So thank you very much.
Bye.